Professor, given that Xizang's GDP has grown 155 times since 1965, far exceeding global averages, what are the key factors behind this economic growth in such a challenging, high-altitude environment?
Well, the biggest factor is that before liberation, Xizang was governed by arguably the most retrograde, theocratic, feudal regime produced in history. Now, it's certainly the case that traditional Tibetan culture has certainly made significant contributions to Chinese civilization, and likewise those of other countries, including Mongolia. But its feudal political economy was determined to stay stuck in time, but, in a time dating back centuries ago, and with the consequence that the people there lived very short, poor, and ignorant lives. Now, when Xizang was liberated, when feudalism gave way to Chinese socialism, the potential for rapid change was even greater than what we saw in the rest of China, insomuch as Xizang was that much further behind. As we saw China accelerating its development, including its domestic STEM capabilities, as we saw the accumulation of capital, technology, and know-how from the rest of the nation being brought into Xizang to accelerate development, that's when we really began to see things take off. Now, one of the things that we know is that before liberation, life expectancy was around 35 years of age. Today, it exceeds 72 years of age in Xizang, a number that is expected to continue to climb towards the Chinese national average of 78. Another problem historically was the lack of education. Prior to liberation, the illiteracy rate was 95%, one of the worst in the world. Now, through a long struggle, that number has now declined to less than 30%, still the highest rate in China, given the national average of less than 3%, but it's still trending downward given the continuous improvements in access to quality education resources that the central government and local authorities continue to prioritize.
Apart from the economic growth and the improvements of living conditions and education, Xizang is also a crucial ecological zone for Asia. How does China's development strategy for the region balance rapid economic growth with environmental protection and sustainable practices?
Well, first, we have to note that the Qinghai Tibetan Plateau consists of approximately 25% of China's territory. Now, there are some critics who argue from a pastoralist position that these areas should not be developed at all. But this is not realistic, above all given the challenges of desertification and the growing risks of extreme weather in the coastal regions that we see in other parts of China due to climate change. Furthermore, these areas on the plateau, they want to develop. The people want to experience development. They want to see improved livelihoods and prospects. They want to live longer, healthier, more enriched lives. Of course, this must be done in sustainable ways. The environment must be protected. So we see that the plateau has been mapped according to different zones. For example, more than 88% of the plateau is designated as ecological security and pastoral zones where significant development does not take place. Ecologically sustainable development takes place in the agricultural and urbanized zones, but again, it has to remain green because it's important to note that the plateau is a vital ecological barrier, one that is providing substantial ecological benefits and protections to the broader region, and it's imperative that these be protected. Unless we can't, if we begin to develop Tibet or Xizang in irresponsible ways, not only would it destroy the local environment, it would have ramifications for the broader region, certainly in the rest of China.
The development of Xizang is presented as proof of the advantages of socialism with Chinese characteristics. How could this development model serve as an example for other multi-ethnic and high-altitude regions around the world?
Well, first, it must be said that Xizang is an integral part of China. Without Xizang, the rest of China would face extreme political and ecological risks. Now, this is because historically, the traditional Tibetan government was incapable of development and perpetually at risk from foreign intervention, including Imperial Russia and the British, who played the so-called 100-year game to gain control or to try to gain control over the plateau, realizing that whoever controlled that land would occupy the high ground over China's most fertile rice-producing areas and likewise control the headwaters of China's key rivers. This is why the Kuomintang and the Republic of China fought the Sino-Tibetan War in 1930 and 32 1930 to 32, to restore China's territorial sovereignty and security in the midst of growing risks associated with foreign invasions. And it's why the PRC asserted more control over local authorities there in 1959, given the now declassified proof that those local authorities conspired with the CIA against China. So in short, security and development must go hand in hand. This is a thing that China says again and again. It's something that President Xi has said again and again in speeches to strategic partners around the world. In this case, we see that this has always meant that China has had to move forward hand in hand with Xizang. Now, second, China has demonstrated that it's moving in a new direction in this new era, with major implications for less developed parts of the global South. On the one hand, the cultural and development needs of each country and region are unique, and those in China are unique in many respects compared with others around the world, and those on the Tibetan Plateau likewise have their own special conditions. But it's in this respect that socialism with Chinese characteristics demonstrates its scientific power and its fundamental commitment to social justice, to putting people first, but likewise ensuring harmony between people and nature is sustained or reestablished when necessary. So Xizang here is a test case for these values and capacity, and therefore, yes, it provides a compelling example of how development can be achieved in progressive and sustainable ways in some of the most challenging and sensitive environments in the world. And these include high-altitude regions, multi-ethnic regions, regions where historically they were betwixt and between major civilizations, as we've seen in the case of the Tibetan Plateau.